It's that time. We finally got branded in Master Duel, and let's get into it with the deck profile. We got 2 Despian Tragedy. This card is amazing. If it is banished or sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add a Despia monster from your deck to your hand except Tragedy. You can banish this card from your hand, target a branded spell or trap in your graveyard, set it to your field. You can only use 1 Tragedy effect per turn only once that turn. This card is just absolutely awesome. If it's sent to the grave or banished, like period, so like if it's sent to the grave for opening, or if it's banished for Allure of Darkness, or sent to the grave for Super Poly, like this card, just amazing float potential. And the fact that you can just grab a branded spell or trap and set it, it's amazing. And so it basically lets you reuse your branded fusion, or lets you reuse your branded opening, or lets you reuse your branded lost. This card is just incredible. You can also use it to set the branded in red, but overall, this is just a great card for the deck. We only have 2 because we really only need 2. Next, we have 2 Maxi. So I'm back to being comfortable with running Maxi in pretty much most of my decks that I want extra consistency in. And that's because Flow Under is still being played, but it's like less of an impactful deck right now. I feel like pretty much everybody's going to be running some sort of branded package or some sort of adventure package. So the Maxi is pretty good in there right now. And in addition to that, if the Maxi is dead, you have plenty of discard outlets for it. Well, you have 2 real discard outlets for it, but you'll see branded opening enough to where, like, if you open with Maxi and you can't use it, you can always discard it for branded opening. You can always discard it for Super Poly. You can always discard it for Lubellion. You can always discard it, for Guardian Chimera. That's like one of the fusions. So you have options. Heck, you can even use it to make Predaplant Verde Anaconda. So you have options to use Maxi if it's dead in this deck. Next we have Ash. Ash is a good card. That's pretty much all I have to say about it. I'm running 2 because the main deck space in this is kind of tight since I'm running the Edge Imp engine. Next we have 3 Edge Imp Chain. When this card declares an attack, you can add an Edge Imp Chain from your deck to your hand. You probably won't ever use that effect. If this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, this is the important one. You can add a Frightfur card from your deck to your hand. You can only use 1 Edge Imp Chain effect per turn, and only once that turn. So that's the important one because we use that effect to add the Frightfur Patchwork, and we use Patchwork to add another Edge Imp monster, which would be another Chain and a Polymerization. So you can discard Edge Imp Chain for opening, or for Super Polymerization, or for Lubellion. And when you discard Chain, you will get to use the Chain effect, and then you'll get to use the Patchwork effect, and you'll get 2 more cards. So discarding a card that replaces itself, that lets you go +1, is just pretty good in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Also, it's a decent fusion target because it's a dark monster. Next, we have Fairy Tale Snow. This is probably the best light fusion target that I found for this deck. I've actually started running this instead of why am I blanking on the name of the card? It's used for everything. Not the Crusadia card. The Dogmatica. Yeah, instead of the Dogmatica engine, it's just easier to use Snow. The fact that you can banish cards to bring Snow out, like you have a lot of dead cards in your graveyard, like the Frightfur Patchwork, and that you can banish that and then pop Snow out for an extra 1850 damage, or potentially to book a moon, a card on your opponent's board that you don't want. It's just, it's really worth it. And the fact that it's reusable, it's just a great card to have. Next we have 2 Fallen Valbas. I think running 3 is kind of bricky. I do know that a lot of people are running 3. Personally, I like it at 2. I'm not really going for the late game grind game. I'm going to just clobber my opponent as quickly as possible. Or if I can't do that, I will burn them with the Despia Tax Collector Dragon, which we'll get into in a bit, and I have some good replays of. But 2 Fallen Wildbass. So when this guy is normal or special summoned, except during the damage step, you can discard 1 card, fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters as either field as fusion material, including this card, but you cannot use other monsters you control as fusion material. So this card's good for the mirror. This card's good if your opponent's playing any dark monsters. You can just get the Starving Venom Fusion Dragon out of it. You can also do the Predaplant Dragon Stepelia if your opponent is playing any sort of fusion monsters. I actually had a Invoke deck I played against earlier where I fused one of their Invoked fusions with my Dark Monster, my Full of Albaz. So it's just a decent card. The only thing to watch out for is if they remove him from the field when you activate the effect, you won't get the effect. So if you're trying to do this under an opponent's Mirror Jade when they haven't used Mirror Jade's effect, I wouldn't recommend doing that. Next we have 3 Alubar, the Jester of Despia. This card is just another must-have MVP for the deck, even more useful than Despian Tragedy. When it's normal or special summoned, you can add a branded spell or trap from your deck to your hand. If a face-up fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect while this card's in your graveyard, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls, special summon this card, negate the targeted monster's effects until the end of the turn. You can only use 1 Alubar Jester of Despia effect per turn and only once that turn. I always think the weirding on that is weird. But yeah, Alubar is amazing. The fact that it can get you pretty much any of your starters that you might need. Like you can get Branded Fusion, you can Branded Opening, you can Branded Red, you can get Branded Loss. Just, it gets you anything you want pretty much. And it has that secondary effect to bring itself back and negate an effect. Just absolutely just great, fantastic, broken card. Next we have Tri-Brigade Courier. I see some people running 2 of this card. I personally only like 1, and I know that a lot of people in the TCG were also only running 1. When your opponent activates a monster effect where you control a fusion monster that mentions Fallen Albaz, when your opponent's monster activates a monster effect while you control a fusion monster that mentions Fallen Albaz as material, you can send this card from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard, negate that effect. If this card's banished, you can add from your deck to your hand 1 Fallen Albaz or 1 monster that mentions it, except Tri-Brigade Courier. You only use each effect of Tri-Brigade Courier once per turn. So that's a decent effect. The fact that you can banish it with Allure of Darkness to get the effect is pretty nice as well. Next we have Springin's Kit. We were really missing this in Springin's. It's also just amazing in this deck as well. If you have a fusion monster that mentions Fallen Albaz as material on your field or in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand, so it can be an extender or a starter. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add to your hand 1 of your branded spell or traps that is banished or in your deck or graveyard. Then place 1 card from your hand on the bottom of the deck. You can only use each effect of Springin's Kit once per turn. So, also great card. Possible extender, possible starter. I'm just running 1 of it because I already have Alubar, I already have Tragedy, I already have Edge and Chain as combo pieces. We don't really need too many more combo pieces. Next we have the 1 Dramaturge of Despia. We are still running it just because 3000 attack is really great. And the secondary ability that if a fusion, Synchro, XYZ, or Link Summon monster is special summoned except during the damage step, you can target 1 effect monster in the field and negate its effects until the end of this turn. It's just amazing. And if this card in your hand or field is used as fusion material and sent to the graveyard or banished, you can special summon this card. You can only use each effect of Dramaturge of Despia once per turn, so it brings itself out easily, has an effect negation effect. The card is great. You really only need 1 because even if you banish it for the fusion, it still gets to come back. So it's you really only need the 1 copy. More than 1 would clog. I'm only running 1 of the Albion, the Shrouded Dragon. It's just an extra Fallen of Albaz, basically. While it's on the field or in the graveyard, its name becomes Fallen of Albaz. If this card is in your hand or graveyard, you can send a Fallen of Albaz or Branded from your hand or deck to the graveyard and apply the following effect based on where you sent it. So if it's from the hand, you can special summon this card. If it's from the deck, you can place this card on the bottom of the deck. And then if you place this card from your hand, draw one card. So it's a little bit extra consistency. If I do draw into it when I don't want to use it, I can always send something like Branded Opening to protect the fusion I'm going to bring out to the graveyard and exchange Albion for another card from my deck. So, decent effect. I just really don't think that you need more than one of them. Next we have one Ad Litem Despia. So during your main phase, you can make all monsters currently on the field gain 100 attack times their level until the end of the opponent's turn. If this card in your hand or field is used as fusion material and sent to the graveyard or banished, you can target one of your Despia monsters or level 8 or higher fusion monsters that is banished or in your graveyard and special summon it. You can only use this effect of Ad Litem Despia once per turn. So you can banish stuff with Snow, then use his effect to bring out the thing you banished from Snow from the banish pile. It's a little bit of a roundabout way of doing it, but it's another way to recycle, so I figured I'd mention it. Next we have the one Nibiru. Even if you can't use the Nibiru is light, so it's a fusion target. So that's all the more decent to run it as a hand trap. Next we have 2 Polymerization, 2 Allure of Darkness, 2 Frightfur Patchwork, 1 Lightning Storm, which the Lightning Storm has been MVP against Flunder, by the way, whenever I do have that matchup, or even against the Mirror. I love having Lightning Storm as the out, even more so if I'm going second, so the 1 Lightning Storm has been pretty decent. Actually, I like it more in this context than I do Evenly Matched, just because Evenly Matched requires me to have no cards, whereas Lightning Storm I can just have face down cards. But I feel like Lightning Storm is a little bit more playable. But if you want to, you could run it evenly instead. Next, we have 3 Branded Fusion. This is the card we were waiting for. You can fusion summon 1 fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand, deck, or field as fusion material. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters the turn you activate this card. You can only activate 1 Branded Fusion per turn. Definitely want to run 3 of it. The card is busted. 1 Branded lost. So the activation of your cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster cannot be negated. So your opponent can't negate your Fallen of Albaz, your opponent can't negate your Super Poly, your Polymerization, your Branded in Red, your Branded Fusion, all that good stuff. And then if you fusion summon a fusion monster, you can add a Fallen of Albaz or a monster from your deck that mentions it to your hand. You can only use this effect of Branded Lost once per turn, so the fact that anything that mentions Fallen of Albaz or Fallen of Albaz itself can be added to your hand is pretty cool. But once again, we're only running 1. You can recycle it if you need to. I felt like running 2 was a little cloggy. Next, we have the 1 Super Poly. I like it for the mirror match. I like it if my opponent's running a deck that has a lot of dark monsters, and I like it if I have the Fallen of Albaz and I can make the Titaniculin Dragon, or the Brigand, or the Albion. I guess you could also make Fortisas with it, because it's light or dark, or for that matter, you could also make Masquerade. But lots of options with Super Poly. Decent in this deck. Running 2 is a little cloggy, but 1's just fine. 1 Called by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, 3 Branded Opening. This is the one where you discard a spell, get a Despia monster from your deck, and you get to add it to your hand or special it in defense. And for the rest of the turn after it resolves, you can only special summon fusion monsters from your extra deck. The best part is, when this card's in the grave, if a fusion monster you control be destroyed by card effect, you can banish this card from the graveyard instead. So many people forget about that effect, but it is awesome. You can only use each effect of Branded Opening once per turn. And then finally, to round out the main deck, we have Branded in Red. Target 1 Despia monster or 1 Fallen Albaz in your graveyard, add it to your hand, then apply the following effect. You can fusion summon 1 level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials mentioned on it from your hand or field, but it cannot attack directly this turn. You can only activate 1 Branded in Red per turn. And then from there, we're going to get into the extra deck. We have one Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, one Predaplant Dragostepelia. My friend Victor recommended this to me a long time ago. Shout out to my buddy Victor. One Fusion Monster plus one Dark Monster. Once per turn, quick effect, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, place one Predaplant counter on it, and if its level is 2 or higher, it becomes level 1 as long as it has a Predator counter. Negate the activated effects of your opponent's monsters that have a Predator counter. So Predaplants, great. Just great archetype that has like great extra deck monsters. Maybe I'll do a pure like branded Predaplant video sometime. But this card is wonderful as an out to so many things. Just being able to quick negate something. Next we have Titaniculin the Ash Dragon. So this card I also use quite a bit. It gains attack equal to the combined original levels of the monsters used for its fusion summon times 100. After this card is fusion summoned, for the rest of the turn, it is unaffected by activated effects of other monsters, special summoned from the extra deck. It says till the end of the turn, but this does not dodge Mirror Jade. You cannot dodge Mirror Jade with this. I just want to let people know. If this card is in the graveyard, like it can't dodge the Mirror Jade blowing up everything effect. It can dodge the removal effect. But if this card's in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, you can add to your hand or special summon one Dogmatic monster or one Fallen Albaz from your deck. You can only use this effect of Titaniculin the Ash Dragon once per turn. Next we have Brigand the Glory Dragon. Cannot be destroyed by battle, so it's decent to stall out. While you control this fusion summon card, your opponent cannot target other monsters you control with monster effects. Also good to force your opponent to target it with things that do target. Keep in mind, Mirror Jade does not target, so this will not protect you against Mirror Jade. During the end phase, if this card was sent there if this card's in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, you can add to your hand or special summon one Tri-Brigade or one Fallen Albaz from your deck. And just like Titaniculin, you can only use this effect of Brigand Glory Dragon once per turn. And then next we have Albion the Branded Dragon. One Fallen Albaz and one Light Monster. If this card is fusion summoned, you can fusion summon one level 8 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, except Albion the Branded Dragon, by banishing fusion materials mentioned on it from your hand, field, and or graveyard. During the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there, you can add to your hand or set one branded spell or trap directly from your deck. You can only use each effect to Albion the Branded Dragon once per turn. So, decent card, good extender. The fact that with Lubellion, you can send this basically and do the fusion and then get to add at the end of the turn. Most of the time you can like add branded fusion off of it. It's pretty great. Next we have Fortisas. So we covered him before in the other Despia video before the new support came out. During the main phase, then this works during your opponent's turn as well. During either player's main phase, basically, you can change the attack of all monsters currently on the field to 0 until the end of this turn, except level 8 or higher fusion monsters. If this face-up card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can add to your hand or special summon one Fall of Albaz or Despia monster from your deck. You can only use each effect of Despia and Fortisas once per turn. Next we have Masquerade the Blazing Dragon, or as I like to call him, the Tax Collector Dragon. While you control this fusion summon card, your opponent must pay 600 life points to activate cards or effects. If your opponent controls a Ritual, Fusion, XYZ, Synchro, or Link monster, while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon it but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use this effect to Masquerade the Blazing Dragon once per turn. So, making your opponent burn themselves, pretty good effect. Next we have 2 Mirror Jade. This card is just MVP of the extra deck. 1 Fall of Albaz plus 1 Fusion, Synchro, XYZ, or Link monster. You can only control 1 Mirror Jade, the Ice Blade Dragon, once per turn. Quick effect, you can send 1 Fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard that mentions Fall of Albaz as material. Banish 1 monster on the field. That's what I was thinking of, not Lubellion, the one that you can use to send Albion. And then banish 1 monster on the field. Also, this card cannot use this effect next turn. So if you use it on your turn, you can't do it during your opponent's turn. If you use it on your opponent's turn, you can't do it during your turn. If this fusion summon card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls during the end phase of this turn. So, really good effects all around. The banish effect does not target. Next we have 2 Lubellion, the Searing Dragon. So 1 dark monster, 1 Fall of Albaz. If this card is fusion summoned, you can discard 1 card, fusion summon 1 level 8 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, except Lubellion, the Searing Dragon, by shuffling fusion materials mentioned on it into the deck from your monsters on the field, graveyard, or face-up banished cards. So this lets you recycle things. For the rest of the turn, this card cannot attack. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters. You can only use this effect to Lubellion, the Searing Dragon, once per turn. And then next we have Guardian Chimera. Guardian Chimera has 3 monsters with different names. Must first be fusion summoned while only using fusion materials from your hand and field with at least 1 monster from each. If this card is fusion summoned by a spell, card, or effect, you can draw cards equal to the number of cards used as materials from the hand, and if you do, destroyed cards your opponents control equal to the number of cards used as material from the field. So you get to draw more if you use cards from the hand, you get to destroy cards in the field based on cards from the field. You can only use this effect of Guardian Chimera once per turn. While Polymerization is in your graveyard, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. And then finally we have Despia Pro Skinian. 1 Despia monster, 1 light monster, plus 1 dark monster. During the main phase, you can target 1 Fusion Synchro Link or XYZ monster in your opponent's graveyard, banish it, or special summon it to your field. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack or defense, whichever is higher. You can only use each effect of Despia Pro Skinian once per turn. So, pretty decent effect. You probably won't use this too much. Sometimes it is useful if you burned your opponent a lot with the Tax Collector Dragon, you can finish him off that way. So it is a decent card. Next we have Predaplant Verte Anaconda. So we're running the 1 Verte because it lets you send a Polymerization or a Fusion spell from your deck to the graveyard. So you can't do Branded Red, but you can do 1 Fusion or Polymerization, normal or quick play spell. So you could do Super Poly, but most of the time I'm just doing Branded Fusion or regular Poly. But yeah, that's it for the extra deck. That's it for the main deck. As always, this video is sponsored by W Energy. Use code SirLargeGaming to get 10% off with the link down below. I love the peach mango flavor myself, and it just gives me way more energy than the canned energy drinks from the grocery store, so I'm a big fan of it. And it also works out being a lot cheaper too. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys with the replays, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.